I used to be one of the nighttime duty managers at a hotel. The hotel consists of the main house, which was built in the late 90s or early 2000s, and the old house, which was built in the 14th century. There are a few spooky stories about the old house and the grounds, which all come from actual events. At one point, it was listed as the third most haunted building in Britain. I wouldn't say that I was a believer or a denier of ghost stories. I thought some events can be explained and some can't. Being a local, I was familiar with all the stories, and my dad had worked there for years when I started. Like I said, I wasn't a believer and wasn't a denier. That was until I became a duty manager. Being a duty manager is a simple enough role, dealing with complaints from hotel guests, handing over to the next duty manager, etc. One of my duties as a nighttime duty manager was to lock up areas of both parts of the hotel, places like the bar, restaurant, and gift shop. Other things, such as making sure fire doors are closed, that emergency lighting is working and closing, and locking windows for security. This part of the job was extensive. Every window, fire door, and emergency lighting. I had to check this every single night. Now, the old house is where all the spooky stuff happens. In the old house is a chapel, pretty standard for a house of that size and age in Britain. This is where I experienced the first spooky thing. There is one window in the chapel that no matter how many times you close and lock, the next time you walk past it, it will be open again. This was experienced by myself, the other duty managers, and even the security guards. Nothing horrifying, but it gets worse. The next spot is a set of stairs called the Jerusalem staircase, named so as the wood for the stairs comes from Jerusalem. I heard some stories about a ghost dog on these stairs that trip people up. I don't think anything of this. It's stairs. People trip on stairs all the time. However, they lead to a room called the Long Gallery. Now, this is a very long room, close to 100 meters. Other than the length, there is nothing else to the room. I was doing my rounds one night. I had come in to do my checks as normal, when suddenly I can hear heavy footsteps coming from the other side of the room, which is possible. There are guest rooms at the other end. I shine my flashlight down the room and I can see nothing. Then it gets crazy. The steps slowly became harder and faster until they sound like someone is sprinting towards me. I am frozen. Next thing I know, I've been shoved against the wall with pain in my back, stomach, and chest like I've been tackled. There's a similar room directly above, but that is only accessible to duty managers and security. Again, not the only person to experience this. The next day, one of my colleagues started telling me a story. A confirmed murder in the house. It's a long story, but I'll summarize. Lord of the house and his wife are expecting a baby. Lord has heard a rumor that wife had an affair, had a local nurse abducted and brought to the house to deliver the baby. Baby was then snatched by the Lord and thrown into the fireplace and murdered his wife. Nurse escapes and curses the family, saying no male heir will be born to the family. The curse kinda came true. No male heir has survived long after birth. Now, the bedroom where these events took place is a popular part of the old house with guests visiting all the time. However, it's not the real room. That's directly above. I've been in the room more times than I can count. Reports of a crying baby are common, but never proven. One thing never reported was blood dripping from the ceiling. As mentioned, the real bedroom is directly above, so myself and security investigated. We found nothing, nobody, not even a drop of blood. The second part is about a sculpture in the chapel of one of the male heirs that died shortly after birth as a result of the quote-unquote curse. The sculpture is pretty normal looking, a baby with its eyes closed. Apart from one night, I looked at the baby and the eyes were open. I ran so fast out of that chapel, I'm pretty sure I broke the land speed record. If you're interested in that hotel, it's called Littlecote House Hotel, in case you feel like visiting. I once worked third shift at a home for the mentally disabled. Our state hospital had shut down and left a bunch of families with nowhere to place their disabled family members who were in need of more care than the families could provide. One such parent founded and built a series of homes for this population, and it became a successful option for these families and their loved ones. The homes were set up with 4 bedrooms, a bathroom, laundry room, and kitchen on both sides, with an enormous pantry connecting the two. On each side, there was a front door, parking lot, and a sliding glass door leading out to a patio and generous fenced-in backyard. Each night, there was one person assigned to each side of the home, and when we arrived to work for night shift, the residents of these homes were usually already asleep. It was our job to check on them at intervals and do prep work for meals and such for first shift. One night in particular, I was working opposite a guy I just met, but he was pretty great. I felt immediately comfortable with him. I was in the kitchen after making food for the next day and was cleaning out the fridge of food that was over 3 days old when I got the intense feeling of being watched from behind. I turned around toward the scallop window in the door, and I saw the face of a young girl in the window. It startled me, especially since she wasn't one of our residents. She looked distraught, and I was moving toward her and making eye contact. She disappeared, there one moment, then just gone. I was understandably pretty freaked out. I went through the pantry to the opposite side of the house to tell my coworker what had just happened, and I described her in great detail. As I did so, his face just went white and he ran off to another room and came back with a photo album. He opened it to a certain page and sat it down on the counter, and there she was, the girl. I said, "Oh my God, that's her," and pointed to her face in the picture. He then had a pretty big freak out and said we were doing everything together for the rest of the night, because I just pointed out to a former resident who had died in the parking lot. She'd had an emergency and an ambulance had been called, but they hadn't even made it out to the parking lot before she passed away. Now I try to find reasonable, rational explanations for things like this, but I'm not ashamed to say that my blood ran cold right there, and we did in fact do everything together for the remainder of that night.